Hello and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview, where we take a look at the stories being followed in the upcoming edition of the North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Dave Frank, and I'm joined here by North Coast Journal news editor Thad Greenson and arts and features editor Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. Hello, welcome guys.
Hi, David.
How you doing?
Pretty good, hanging in there. There's blue skies. That makes us happy these days.
Indeed.
So let's dive right in. Thad, what's going on? What's on the cover of this week's North Coast Journal?
Well, the cover story we have this week is actually a cover package for Burger Week, the annual promo that we do, where restaurants throughout town come up with kind of their best burger creations. And we have kind of a fun little bingo game that folks can play. If you can eat 16 burgers in 10 days?
It is 16 burgers.
I
Some
think
of them
you can
with
do
more
it.
than one patty. It's a big challenge.
Yeah, lots of nacho cheese sauce, bacon. It gets real fast.
There are shaved Brussels sprouts on one. I don't know how we feel about that. Controversial. Share your feelings.
That is the WAB, I believe, right?
Yes.
The wet something burger?
That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Brussels sprouts, onions, and bacon is the way it goes down pretty good. I would imagine that might be yummy on a burger.
And there's one on a stick, as we mentioned before we started. There is a burger on a stick.
So I'll take you guys up on that challenge and go try the bingo card, the burger pull-out. That sounds like something that's worthwhile for sure.
Yes.
It should be a good time.
Yeah.
But before we get into the kind of news of the week that I wanted to talk about, I wanted to put in we got some great news at the end of last week after we recorded last week's episode that the Association of Alternative News Media, a nationwide organization that kind of represents alt weeklies such as the Journal, named Jennifer Fumiko Cahill's food writing as the best in the nation.
Oh my goodness gracious. Congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you. There's no living with me now.
No, there never was before.
That's true.
And for folks, paying attention at home, this shouldn't be a terrible surprise. One of the pieces that was in her entry, Butter and Belonging at Red Lobster, was named earlier this year as the California Newspaper Publishers Association's best piece of writing in its category. So her work is rightfully getting lots of recognition. Anybody who hasn't read those pieces should go find them on our website. They're each wonderful, and it's an important reminder to read Jen's food writing every single week.
Thank you, Thad. But it should also be noted that that is not the only award that we took home from the Ann Awards.
Yes, I was going to get to that. Our media literacy issue, which we started a couple years ago as an annual issue, was named the second best special section of all of Ann papers, second only to the Chicago Reader's Best Of issue, which had 15 contributing staff members. So we feel like to be second to them is okay. We can live with that.
This is pretty amazing. Congratulations to you both and to the organization. This is awesome to know that we have something going on in our community that's being recognized like this. So I'm thankful for you guys, and hopefully everybody else out there is too.
Thank you. We're very excited about it. And just one more thing about the media literacy issue. It was only made possible by a kind of a stable of freelancers that we used. I think we had 6 or 7 freelance contributions in that issue. And we're kind of using that as an opportunity to plug an event we're having on October 8th, a virtual event called I think it's the Writers Roundup, where we're trying to get more people contributing to what we're doing at the Journal. So we're going to have an online just kind of a quick presentation about what it means to write for the Journal, different things that we're looking for, how the process works, and then just answer questions from folks who might be interested in writing for the Journal but don't have experience, have never done it before, kind of want to get a foot in the door. It'll be a great opportunity for folks. Mm-hmm. And the details of that will be all over our website and social media accounts and stuff, so folks can check that out in the next couple of weeks and email us an RSVP and get signed up.
This is great, and it's open to anyone in the community who's interested in learning more about writing for you guys, right?
Absolutely, anybody and everybody.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. Like I said, congratulations, and also it's amazing that you're looking to bring some of your listeners and viewers into the fold to be part of the team, which is really great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to plug it. The more voices we have in the paper, the better. There's no doubt about that. So.
Agreed. I love working with you guys, and we bring lots of, mostly you, bring lots of voices to the community. So this is really cool. Speaking of which, what's the meat and potatoes story that you covered this week that you want to share with us, Thad?
Yeah, the news story I was hoping to speak to is actually by a freelancer, Linda Stansberry, who has kind of hit the trifecta now for us, and that she was a freelancer, then a staff writer, and is now back to being a freelancer. But she dove into the controversial situation surrounding Eureka's needle exchange program, the Humboldt Area Center for Harm Reduction, a nonprofit based by the main branch of the Eureka Library that has been doing needle exchange for a few years now, with lots of controversy surrounding it. And so the Eureka City Council recently voted to send a letter urging the state of California not to renew Hatcher's license when it is up for renewal next month, which is kind of a bold step for a council that just a couple of years ago passed a proclamation in support of not just needle exchange as a concept, but Hatcher specifically as being the organization to do it.
So this is the city council of Eureka who made the tough decision, I guess, to figure out a way to address concerns that they have about the program and the organization and its implementation. What are some of the issues that they pointed out that need to be addressed?
Yeah, so the organization itself has kind of been controversial since its inception. There's some people who feel like it just enables like needle exchange as a concept or as a practice enables drug users. So kind of had that blowback from the beginning. And then there's people who've been very vocal about the proliferation of needle litter throughout Eureka. I think it's not uncommon for anybody who spends a lot of time in Eureka to have noticed a syringe on the ground here or there. There's some neighborhoods where the problem's really concentrated. And rightly or wrongly, Hatcher has been a focal point for that ire and that frustration. And there's people who feel like they're not doing enough to make sure that the needles they give out are coming back. And so some months back, a group of concerned neighbors had a meeting with the city manager and the police chief to kind of voice their concerns and their complaints. And kind of unusually, the Eureka Police Department then did kind of a months-long undercover sting operation, which we couldn't really get answered if it began as a criminal investigation or just kind of some kind of civil undertaking by the city. But they had undercover officers both surveilling the exchange program and then also actually going in to exchange needles. And they issued a report that doesn't have any criminal charges against, or didn't recommend or arrest anybody for who works with Hatcher or is really affiliated with the programs there. But they came out with this report that kind of alleges that Hatcher was enabling drug sales on site, was enabling drug use on site, and was not doing enough to kind of control their clientele. Oddly, at the Eureka City Council meeting just last week, this was not a major topic of conversation. That there was a lot of voicing of support of Hatcher from the community, and then the council members really voiced concerns with Hatcher's communication with the city and being kind of a visible neighborhood partner in this effort, and kind of felt like some council members felt like the organization had really left the city council and council members specifically kind of in the firing line, so to speak, of addressing these neighborhood complaints.
Yeah, so this city council decision, it looked from the article, it looked like it wasn't unanimous, first of all, but also not everyone was really against what they do. Harm reduction in principle seemed like a really good idea that they support generally for the community, but then there was more of a technical complaint about just reporting and communication. Is that right?
Yeah, there was. So yeah, I mean, universally, all the council members voiced support for harm reduction and for needle exchange as a principle or as a practice. And it seemed like the rub was, and I mean, some and also just like spoke very glowingly of aspects of what Hatcher does. I think it was Councilmember Kim Burgell who said, you do an amazing work with clients, and the difference you make in people's lives is really profound. And different council members had different concerns, but yeah, there was concerns about under its agreement with the city, Hatcher is supposed to submit quarterly reports, kind of detailing how many syringes it was giving out, how many it was bringing back, other aspects of its operation. Apparently there'd been a failure to do that. And it sounds like, generally just really poor communication between the organization and the city. And you mentioned it was not a unanimous vote. Councilmember Castellano was the dissenting vote. And she felt like rather than sending this letter urging the state not to recertify Hatcher, that they should have kind of stakeholder meetings and try to work out these issues. Interestingly, she's a little bit newer in the council and has a little bit less of a history with Hatcher. And then it's also, important to note that the city does not have authority over Hatcher's operations. It is the state of California. And so this is kind of the only tool at their disposal if they wanted to see Hatcher close its doors, is to kind of urge the state to take action.
So in addition to what you just talked about from the city council's perspective, and also from the police department's investigation, which revealed some behavior which probably needed to be addressed based on community input, what was the response from Hatcher, representative of the organization, about these complaints and about this letter?
Yeah, so they say that they haven't they haven't seen kind of the evidence that the police department put together, and so they can't, respond directly to some of the specific allegations. But what they've said generally is, they don't do anything to, they, I guess, wholeheartedly deny the allegations. They say that they don't do anything to facilitate drug sales on the premises. They have a zero tolerance policy. They really, work hard to prevent that and to minimize neighborhood impacts. And they've just had a change in their executive director, but their former executive director told us that, she's repeatedly talks with concerned neighborhood community members and gives them her personal phone number and encourages them to call if they see something that's kind of out of line. And, I think one thing that's interesting is there's kind of an element of perception at play here. And I don't know, what was going on at Hatcher on day to day. But I know that, one of a couple of the instances that are referenced in the police report. One is that, an undercover officer was waiting in line to access Hatcher's services. And so was kind of out the door waiting in line. And another client of Hatcher's came up and asked him if he had drugs for sale. Another one was that an officer in plainclothes visited the organization for like an open house evening, and somebody came out of the bathroom appearing very high on opioids. And these are things through a certain lens could be indicative of, some poor behavior and them not doing enough to kind of make sure these things don't occur on the premises. But another lens, you could say, well, they're dealing with an inherently, addicted group who are gonna maybe not toe the line as well. And maybe it's not surprising that at a needle exchange program, somebody was on the premises who was high on opioids, or that somebody, unbeknownst to staff, was hitting up other clients for drugs. Maybe these are things outside Hatcher's control. It's hard to say.
Which I think kind of leads to, what the expectation might be for future resolution. The California Department of Public Health gets to, field and receive this letter and make a determination about certification for the needle exchange program. I think that you somewhat alluded to the fact that, there was maybe some communication issues that could be addressed. Do we know what possible outcomes might, result from this action by the city council?
Yeah, so the Hatcher members of the Hatcher board and their new executive director have pledged that they're going to be in contact with the city. They're going to be trying to address any concerns that the city or neighbors have. But the ball is really in the California Department of Public Health's court now, and so they are expected to issue a decision next month in October. Of course, it's a department that has its hands full with a global pandemic at the moment. So there's the possibility that this could really languish and we couldn't see resolution on this for some months. But those are the next step is Hatcher's going to try to be a good neighbor. At least that's what they're saying. And we'll see what the Department of Public Health says.
Well, thanks. We'll stay tuned and we'll keep our eyes out for some follow-up in the future, maybe October or beyond. Thank you.
Thanks.
How about you, Jennifer? What's going on the Arts and Features beat this week?
Well, this week I've reported before on the opening of Island Delight, the Hawaiian restaurant that's over on Harris, where Amy's Delight was previously. Did you ever go to Amy's Delight?
I never have. No.
I'm so sorry. Now. I'm so sorry for you, because she used to do, among other things, honestly, I think the best biscuits and gravy in Humboldt County. Fight me. And Also, she used to do a fantastic fried rice omelet,
Oh,
which
wow.
made me extremely happy. So many feelings. But, you know, it was time for her to retire, and now Island Delight is there instead. She's not far, by the way. Amy, whose last name is Saddam, everybody just knows her as Amy, but actually her name is Pilian Saddam. Anyway, she's right next door at Amy's Liquor, where she and her husband Daryl now run that. Apparently working 6 hours a day in a liquor store on your feet is retirement for them. I don't know.
Restaurant hours are rough.
Yeah, so exactly. That should give you an idea of what running a restaurant is like. If running a liquor store is like literal retirement. So anyway, I went and talked to the new owners of Island Delight and talked to them about their food and their family, which they are a husband and wife, Samasoni Fanoti and Kiaka Roberts Fanoti. They have 5 kids. Take a second. 5 kids who are all doing different sports.
Oh, that's a busy day.
Yeah, once school sports come back, that's going to be their whole life. They got twins playing basketball. This one's playing volleyball. That one's playing rugby. It's a lot. So they're already busy people, and they started this restaurant in the middle of a pandemic. Is amazing to me.
Yeah.
And the food that they serve is food that you have to start cooking at 5 a.m, because that is how Kiaka's grandmother taught her to make kalua pig, among other things, which if you haven't had kalua pig, it is the wonderful low and slow Hawaiian method of cooking pork all day long until it just falls apart into a lovely, fatty, glistening pile of tasty meat.
So good.
I love it.
So good. There is nothing that isn't better with kalua pork on top of it. Nothing. Is your baby crying? Put a little kalua pork on top. But yeah, everything, you know, I've had their food. I ordered a bunch of stuff. They make the loco moco. They make all the, which is the burger with the gravy and fried eggs on top of it on a bed of rice, on hot rice, which, pro tip, all gravy foods are better on top of white rice. There, you've already learned a couple of things today.
Love it.
Anyway, I started talking to them about, you know, their life and their business. And at some point, Sam Fanoti kind of said to me that, yeah, transferring the business over, he kind of said something about Amy kind of passing them the business. And so I talked to her, and she said that she basically gave them the business. She owns that building. And so they pay rent to her. You know, they're still paying her for using the restaurant and everything. But in the way that you would normally pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy a business, you know, a restaurant business in a location that's been there for so long, you know, it's a pretty solid business. She and her husband, Daryl, just kind of gave it to them.
Wow.
And so I had to know more. And it was an amazing story. In fact, years ago, when she first met Sam, Amy used to feed him. He'd come in and he was just a hungry college student. And she'd say, come on, what do you want? I'll make you anything. I'll make you anything. And he told her about loco moco. And she was like, I can make that. And she just whipped it up for him for this, you know, homesick kid. And she used to give him odd jobs and things like that. And she kind of said to me, like, you know, well, I knew him before he got in trouble. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And I talked to Sam again, and it turned out that when he was younger, around the time when he had his first kid, first out of high school, he, you know, was surrounded by people who were doing drugs and selling drugs, and he got into selling meth, or he sold hard drugs, and eventually family. And he described that experience as kind of transformative. It was amazing. He told me that he was, at one point, he'd been kind of in the life for a lot of years, and he was miserable. He was making money. He was able to, you know, support his family, but he just hated it so much. It wasn't for him. And he said he's not a religious person, but he is spiritual. And he sat down and he actually prayed for like the first time in his life for a way out. And a month later, when he was arrested, he was like, okay, this is not what I was hoping for, but but he took it as a way out and went threw himself into a a cognitive kind of a cognitive rehabilitation program in prison.
Oh, cool.
Where they kind of taught him how to make better decisions, taught him to reflect on his life and his choices. And this is right now to come out and have a few years to get back on his feet. Like, he was telling me how happy he was to get a 4 a.m. shift at Costco running forklifts. Like, he was just so happy to get a chance to do something and work. And that's the quality that Amy saw in him. And she herself, she said, well, I have a past I want to forget too. And she told me about when she was in Taiwan, where she was born, and she was 19, and her father arranged for her to marry someone she did not want to marry, and she ran away. And she had no money. She had nowhere to go. And she was by herself, scared, and 19. And she walked from her little town all for hours and hours to get to the city. And she said she didn't know anybody. She was terrified. And a woman who was running a food stall asked her if she was hungry. And she gave her something to eat, and then found her work, helped her, kept her from ending up living on the streets, which she doesn't know how she would have gotten out if it hadn't been for one person. And she's had other luck too. Somebody, a gentleman helped her to co-sign a loan to buy the building that she's in. And she really understands, she and her husband both understand both the value of a second chance, what it means to be a person who can transform their life through hard work. And also they understand, what it means to get help. A little bit of help in this world made the difference for her to become independent. She talked about, really changing her life once she came to the US, and just kind of vowing like she was going to go to college, she was going to do stuff and prove that she could do it, and prove that she could be like, a stand-up citizen. And, Sam and his wife Kiaka are on for her a similar path. So she thought, I'm going to be this helping hand for them. And it's incredible. And, the kind of general kindness feels so rare sometimes. And so it was just a pleasure to talk to people who were really frank about their circumstances and really honest about their lives and their goals, which, they're well on the way to. And it was really, Thad and I were talking last night, we were texting back and forth, and he was like, wow, I'm looking at this, reading their story, and I feel like, wow, look, what have I done? And I felt the same way. I was like, really? I complain about my life ever? Mm-hmm. But it was great. And I'm going to be watching how Island Delight does. And they've, the kids are pitching in at the restaurant. If you go to get one of their insanely giant Hawaiian shave ice things, they defy physics. I'm watching their daughter put